Hello, I'm Jeff Powers, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. I'm joined again by a contributing writer here for RealTime Fantasy Sports, Logan Glaser. Logan, thanks as always for coming on with me today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
We like to pick a different category every week. We look at all the games. We do something different every week. We've done under the radar plays, cold plays, pick 'em plays. This week, we're going to do DFS. So we're going to go over each game, talk about our favorite DFS plays for the week. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will be happy to answer them. I was telling Logan, I've been hit with a lot of questions this week, and I think it's because the buys start. So a lot of people have tougher lineup decisions. Guys are hurt as well. So it gets tougher when these buys start, right, Logan?
Absolutely, yeah. You're faced with those tough decisions on your lineups, as you mentioned. Before the buys hit, normally you don't have many tough decisions unless a player breaks out on your bench, such as like say Nico Collins, and you have to decide, do you want to put him in your lineup versus someone else? But now with these bye weeks approaching, there's also a lot of waiver wire pickups that you have to make. Say both your running backs have buys this week, which is the case for a lot of teams with that. So they would have to go out and pick up a player.
Yeah, and the teams on a bye this week, the Browns, Chargers, Seahawks, and Bucks. So there's some good players on benches this week, definitely. So it'll be kind of tough. I was talking about how we're going to talk about DFS plays for each game this week, but let's talk about our contest here at Real Time Fantasy Sports. So you go to rtsports.com/DFS. You can see all the different daily sports challenges we have on here, and there's just a lot of great contests. You can play NFL, MLB, PGA, league sizes 2 to 400. There's fees that range from free, which is great, to over $1,000. We have different formats as well. You can do drafts or salary cap formats. And if you take advantage of the fantasy alarm deal right now, go to rtsports.com/alarm. First time depositors get a 100% instant match up to $200. So it's a great deal. And as always, please play responsibly. If you need any help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But Logan, tell me about one of the contests we're running here this week at Real Time.
Yeah, our largest GPP, which stands for guaranteed prize pool. So even if the contest does not fill, it will run. Sometimes there's even some overlay in there. So take advantage of that. Is our $20 NFL championship GPP with that. First place gets $900 in cash with that. So take advantage of that.
Yeah, and we're going to try to help you win it, right? We're going to give you all the players we like and all the games.
Just copy all these players and you'll be all set.
Exactly. You listen to our advice and we'll help you out. So we're going to run the gambit here. We're going to tell you players that are cheap, some players that have a higher price tag that we still think are going to produce big and are worth it. So we're going to run through all the games, tell you our favorite players of the week. And as I said earlier, if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat as well. And with these players too, it doesn't just pertain to DFS. Obviously, you can use them in your regular fantasy lineups as well, because if we like them for DFS, obviously we like them for fantasy purposes as well. So hopefully we can hit on a lot of players that you're thinking about playing this week. All right, Logan, let's jump into the Thursday night game. Bears 0-4, blew that game last week, had a big lead and lost. They're at the Commanders 2-2. So another riveting Thursday night game. Give me your DFS play for this one.
Yeah, it's been over a year since the Bears won a game. It's hard to kind of believe that. But my DFS play for this game is going to be Sam Howell. He's $5,200 on that. And when you're looking at this game, there's also a Thursday night only slate and then also a Thursday through Monday, so that you can include these. So if you want to just do Thursday, feel free to do that. But Sam Howell, he's $1,500 cheaper than Justin Fields, and he has a great matchup versus this Bears defense. The Bears have allowed at least 27 points in every single game so far this year, which is remarkable with that, including that blown game against Denver last week where they had just a atrocious fourth quarter. But Sam Howell's been pretty good so far. He's only had one bad game so far. He's gone 20, 24, 6, and then 23. He just had that bad week 3 against Buffalo, but I think he's a great position, and he's got a pretty cheap salary at $5,200.
Yeah, I'm going with the Commander as well, and it's somebody in the passing game, not Sam Howell, but I like that call. I like Terry McLaurin. He's just $5,400, so it's not a huge price tag for a guy that caught 8 passes for 86 yards on 10 targets last week. That was his best game of the season. He has at least 5 catches, 3 straight games. The Commanders' passing game, in my opinion, is starting to click a little bit. I think they're getting that offense. Eric Bieniemy's done a good job with Sam Howell, like you mentioned. I think McLaurin's going to keep his hot ways against a bad Bears secondary, like you said. They're 29th overall against the pass, allow 267.8 passing yards per game. So I like McLaurin at that cheap salary. All right, we have another London game. The Jags are not London. It's near London, correct? I can't even
I think
remember.
it is in
Is
London.
it London? Okay.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Regardless, it's an overseas game and it's early. It's the Jags again, 2-2 at Buffalo, 3-1. So the Jags, uh, they're won a couple games still. They've been really disappointing to me this year. I thought they would be better overall, but maybe they'll start to get going. Big game this week though against Buffalo. Who's your DFS play in this one?
Yeah, DFS play for this is gonna be Dalton Kincaid at only 3,400. I think that price point is just way too cheap for him. That's the 19th ranked tight end on that salary chart with that. So this is strictly a value play. He hasn't had any like huge breakout games, but he's been targeted. He's got 15 receptions through 4 games. So I mean, Josh Allen is looking his direction, and being that cheap at 3,400, that's basically the same price as the defense on DFS. So I will go ahead and take that. And I do think this is going to be an over in the game. The over under is 48.5. So I think that just helps Kincaid even more with that being a high scoring game.
So you took my guy Logan. It was Dalton Kincaid. I agree.
His
Just a
salary
super,
is just too cheap to
yeah.
pass up for.
Too cheap. Like you said, he hasn't done a whole lot to date, but he does have at least 4 receptions, all but a game. He's still getting weekly targets. I think he's due for a big game. Could be this week against Jacksonville. They've really struggled against the tight ends as well. They allowed the third most fantasy points to tight ends. So I'm taking advantage of that Kincaid salary at $3,400. I like that call.
Absolutely.
All right, next game, Texans 2-2 at the Falcons 2-2. So 2-2 teams going at it this week in this matchup. Falcons offense has been a little anemic at times outside of Bijan Robinson. Texans offense has actually looked pretty good though. So that passing game's kind of rolling a little bit. Are you looking at any of those pass catching options for your DFS play, Logan?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to go with another guy that's had a really hot start, and that's Nico Collins. I mentioned him earlier, but he's only 5,700 on DFS, wide receiver ranked number 20 for salary. And that's just way too low for the production that he has had so far. He's had games of 14, 27, 6, and then 36. 36 points last week for that wide receiver position. But um, again, kind of mentioned Atlanta's offense has been struggling, but Houston's offense has been fire hot. And they're going to be playing on turf at Atlanta. So I expect a lot of points to be scored by that offense. So I'm going to go with Nico Collins.
I like the offensive well in Houston, and I like CJ Stroud. So he's $6,000 on DFS. Not super cheap, but not as expensive as the elite guys. And he's been producing like those elite guys. He's actually sixth overall in fantasy quarterback scoring his last 3 games, 10th overall for the season. Stroud has 2 300-yard games and 3 straight games with multiple touchdowns. I think he does it again this week, hits that 300-yard mark, throws multiple touchdown passes as well. Atlanta, middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks as well. So I think he keeps it rolling this one, and I like him at that price tag. All right, next game, Panthers 0-4 at the Lions 3-1. So Lions heavily favored in this game. What are you looking at DFS wise?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of rumors going around about Panthers trying to get a wide receiver one, kind of a star wide receiver, which I don't know what they would give up to go get a star wide receiver because they don't have their first round draft pick and they're 0-4. You'd think they'd be wanting to keep those draft picks with the season kind of gone. But a really bright spot so far for the Panthers has been Adam Thielen, and that's who I'm going to be targeting in this. And he's only 5,100. His last 3 games, he has 67 fantasy points. He has got 25 receptions in those 3 games, and he has just been a PPR machine for them. And it doesn't really matter who's at quarterback, if it's Andy Dalton or Bryce Young. He's just performed, and he's probably been one of the best value plays in season-long leagues. And I think that $5,100 on DFS is still just too cheap for him.
Yeah. And they could be playing from behind. Lions really good offense, put up a
Absolutely.
lot of points, so they could have to throw a lot. So I'm going with a different pass catcher. This is a little deeper dive. So if you want to take a chance for a really cheap salary, and I think he could produce, Hayden Hurst, he's $3,100, so it's actually cheaper than Kincaid even. So he's dirt cheap, and he's produced some this year. He played well in week 1, hasn't done a whole lot after that, but he does have uh, some production in these games. He has at least 3 targets every game this year. He's getting some weekly looks. They could be playing from behind. Lions have really struggled to stop the tight end as well. They allow the second most fantasy points to tight end. So again, Hurst is really cheap, 3,100. So if you want to save on a position, take a chance on a guy I think could produce big like he did in week 1, definitely the potential's there. So I like Hayden Hurst in that matchup.
Yeah, I like that pick. Yeah, as you mentioned, he had a great week 1 and has kind of just gone since, but a great matchup to
Yeah,
rebound in.
definitely. All right, next game, Titans 2-2 at the Colts 2-2. So 2-2 teams again going at it here. This one in Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson returned last week, looked really good. Jonathan Taylor could play this week. They haven't really said he's going to play, but it definitely looks like it's leaning that way at least.
Yeah, he announced that he's 100% healthy, but it's kind of just up to the coaching staff on what they kind of want to do with Taylor. So still a
Yeah,
lot of question
interesting.
marks remain, even if he will play for that team, demanding kind of a trade with that.
Yeah, and Zach Moss has played well in his place the last couple weeks, so I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens here. But if Taylor's healthy, you got to think he's going to be the lead back in that offense. He's super talented, and team's actually playing pretty well as also. So I think that might help Taylor to get on the field, at least from his perspective, maybe playing in a better team than he thought he was going to. So be interesting to see how that all plays out. Definitely something I'm going to watch this weekend. But who's your DFS play in this one, Logan?
Yeah, I'm going to be going with the defense in this matchup, and I'm going to go with Indianapolis defense with that. They've had 14 sacks in 4 games so far, so they've done a great job getting after the quarterback. And Tennessee's offense has just struggled a lot moving the ball with Ryan Tannehill. Derrick Henry had a good week last week against Cincinnati, but they have really struggled in that passing offense, and I think this is going to be a very low-scoring matchup. I think I like the under on this, so I'm going to be going with Indianapolis defense and then kind of stay away from offensive players in this.
You got to pick a defense. You're right,
You have
Logan.
to.
And also, I like to save on defenses. I don't want to spend a lot of money on
Yeah.
defense. They don't cost too much anyway, but if you can get a cheap one that you think could produce
Oh,
well,
yeah,
good
absolutely.
play. Yeah. I actually like Anthony Richardson in this matchup. I know his price tag's a little high. He's kind of close to those elite options. He's $7,000, but still, he's been producing big. He scored a season high 32.6 fantasy points last week. He averages 25.4 fantasy points per game, and that was in a game where he played just a quarter. So that includes that game. He scored at least 18 fantasy points all 3 games he has played. Titans 24th against the pass. They struggle in that area. I think Richardson could produce big once again. He's getting it done on the ground, in the air as well. So I like him despite that salary. I think he could really be a good fantasy play this week. All right, next game, Logan. Giants 1-3 at the Dolphins 3-1. Giants might be one of the most disappointing teams in all of football. Looked absolutely horrific last week. That offensive line could not block anyone. They're signing people
Mhm.
off the street now, trying to get some help in that area. They signed Justin Pugh, I think, is who they just signed. Correct? He used to be with them.
Yes. Yep.
They picked him up. Dolphins, on the other hand, they're a team that played really well this year. Uh, they're huge favorites in this game as well. I think it was like 11.5.
Yeah.
Regardless, it looks like they're going to roll. I'm guessing you're going to lean towards the Dolphins player in this
I
matchup.
sure am. Yeah, it's just that Giants offense, that offensive line has just been so bad. There's so many videos just going around on Twitter where it's basically I mean, it was just hiked to Daniel Jones and he was immediately under pressure multiple times last week
Poor
with
guy.
that. So the player I'm going to be looking at is Tua Tagovailoa at 7,100. I think that's a fair price for him. It's not outrageous amount, but he's still in the elite category. And he's put up elite numbers so far. He's got 35, 16, 31, and 18 through his first 4 games. I mean, anything above 25 is kind of what you're looking at for that price point, and I think he's very capable of getting over that 25 mark, especially against Giants defense that has also struggled a bit. The only concern with that is how close this game will be, because you really want a QB that's going to be in a close matchup, so that way he's in the game throughout. But as long if the game stays close, then I love Tua. If it stays within 1 or 2 possessions, if it gets out of hand, then you're just hoping that he gets those touchdowns early on, and it doesn't go to the running backs and Mostert and Kingy. But so I'm gonna go with Tua.
So I actually like the running back in this matchup with Miami. I like Devin Achane in this one. He's still not considered in that elite category, at least yet in our DFS pricing. He's 6,100, so not too pricey for him, and he's been fantastic lately. Second overall in fantasy running back scoring his last 3 games. And in one of those games, the first game he played all year, he really didn't see the field much. So it's been the last 2 games when he's produced huge and got him those monster fantasy numbers. He has 2 straight games with 100+ rushing yards, top 25 fantasy points each of those games. He's starting to get more play, and I think it could be sooner than later he takes over the starting job from Raheem Mostert, who actually fumbled last week, had a poor
Yeah,
game. He actually
a
fumbled
couple
twice, and
fumbles.
he
Yeah,
fumbled twice, only lost one. He ran, I think it was like 7 times for 9 yards or something crazy. Not a good number at all. So I think a chain is a guy that could be emerging in that explosive offense. Also, he played 60% of the snaps last week compared to 43% for Mostert. That was the biggest differential between those players all year as well. And as you mentioned, the Giants defense, not the greatest. They allow the 10th most fantasy points of running backs as well. So I like a chain in this one. I'm still going to take advantage of that price while I can, because I think it's going to be starting to rise in the coming weeks. All right, Logan, next game on the slate. Saints 2-2 at the Patriots 1-3. Patriots offense, bit of a dumpster fire right now. Mac Jones does not look good. I saw a stat where he has only completed, I think it was 4 passes of 20+ yards all year. I just saw that. It's just
yeah, that's
not
not
good.
good through 4 games.
No, it is not good at all. That's a kind of a one-dimensional offense at this point. Just has not looked good, and you have to wonder if they're going to start looking at other options at QB. But who do you like DFS wise in this
For
game?
sure. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good game. It's kind of almost a must-win game for both teams. If Patriots lose this, they're going to be going to 1-4 with that. And as you mentioned, Saints, if they win this, they're winning record and back in that playoff hunt. You don't want to drop below 500 going into week 5 with that. But a guy I'm going to be looking at is going to be Alvin Kamara, 6,300, and he had 13 receptions last week. The highest for a running back was 8 receptions, and Kamara on his first game back had 13 receptions. He only netted 21.4 fantasy points, as he didn't have much yardage with those receptions. But if you're in a PPR league, your eyes are just lighting up with that. If he can put up even 7 receptions each week, you are absolutely thrilled with that. And at that price point, he's only the 12th ranked running back. So that I think he has a very high ceiling, especially if you're doing a GPP with that.
For the second time, Logan, you stole my guy. That was my guy too,
It's a good
Kamara.
pick.
Yeah, I agree. 6,300, 13 catches. He only had 33 yards on those 13 catches. That's kind of amazing to me. But I was most encouraged by the fact he played 75% of the snaps in his first game of the season. So there was some concern he might not, be the feature back like he was in the past. But he played a ton. He was out there a lot. And also, I think you can't overlook the fact that Derek Carr is battling a shoulder injury. I think that might have led to some of those dump offs to Kamara. Maybe he can't push the ball down the field as well as he has been earlier in the season. So I think that bodes well for Kamara. I think he has another good game this week, especially against a defense that likes to bend but not break in New England. So I think it bodes well for Kamara to rack up the catches once again. All right, this is kind of a division rival game, always usually a pretty good game. The Steelers have not played well this year. Next game is the Ravens 3-1 at the Steelers 2-2. Steelers a bit of a mess right now. I know Coach Mike Tomlin was talking about changes need to be made, and he's going to try to right the ship. But right now they're a little bit of a mess. Ravens favored in this game. So what are you looking at
Yeah,
DFS
that
wise?
offense for Pittsburgh, I'm staying away from it completely. I think they've just had a really hard time moving the ball, and their defense has bailed them out several times. Pat Freiermuth is also hurt. Kenny Pickett's been a little bit banged up coming into this week, so I'm staying away from them. And this player that I'm going to go with, I think he's my favorite price point out of everyone on the slate, and that's Mark
Wow.
Andrews at 5,500. I think he's just a steal at that price at 5,500. He's 3 touchdowns in 3 games so far, 16 points per game. And only $100 more than Darren Waller, who has done absolutely nothing so far on the season. So only $100 more expensive than Waller, and you're going to get a top tight end in Mark Andrews in that. So I'm going to be going
I,
with
I
Andrews.
like that call. That's definitely a great price point. So I actually am going with the Steeler. I'm taking a chance. I like Jalen Warren at 4,900.
Yeah.
Uh, Pretty cheap
That's been the only
price for
bright
him.
point from their offense so far.
Yeah, exactly. He averages nearly 10 fantasy points per game. He has at least 3 receptions every game this year, so that gives him a pretty good floor. Kenny Pickett's hurting. I think they could run the ball more, especially if Pickett plays, more dump offs as well to Warren, especially. So at that price point, I might take a chance on him as my number 2 back or maybe even a cheap flex option. So I kind of like Warren because, especially because I think the Ravens could get up in this game as well, meaning the Steelers could have to throw the ball more and Warren could be on the field because he's the top third down back on that team. All right, the next game is a battle of 1-3 teams. One of them's a little bit surprising that they're 1-3. The other one, not so much, although they've surprised me because I think they've played better than I
Yeah.
expected. And that's the Bengals at the Cardinals. So the Bengals go on the road, face Arizona. Who do you like DFS here?
Yeah, DFS, I'm gonna go with James Conner. It's kinda surprising when your team's 1-3 and you're thrilled with their performance so far, but I think we all expected Arizona to be one of the worst teams coming in, and they've actually looked okay. Dobbs has actually been a pretty good quarterback so far for them, with that. I really like the over in this matchup. I think both of these offenses, I think Cincinnati eventually has to click. They just have too much talent. I I think eventually someone that offense will get clicking. And I think Arizona's done an okay job moving the ball. So I like the over and of that 44.5. So I think fine taking several players in this matchup. But the first one I'm going to be looking at is going to be James Conner. He's only 5,800 with that. And in his last couple of games, he's had 12, 16, 20, and 7. So he has a little bit of let down last week, but he's got the capability of having pulling off receptions. He hasn't been as great in receiving yards this year. He's been more of a rusher, but past history shows that he's very dominant through receiving as well.
So I like a Cardinal as well. Who'd have thought that? Both of us picking Cardinals in this matchup. And it's Joshua Dobbs, and it's because he's cheap. Like you said, he's been producing as well. So he's $5,200. So if you want to save on a QB, go a different route, spend your money maybe on a running back, maybe you want to get Christian McCaffrey, something along those lines. I think going with Dobbs isn't a bad play. He has 26 plus fantasy points, 2 of his last 3 games. He's yet to throw an interception this season, which is pretty amazing to me. I'm thinking I kind of talked about this in our waiver wire video that we did earlier this week as well, Logan, but he could be this year's Geno Smith. He really has
Yeah.
been impressive to me. They have some weapons on that offensive side of the ball as well. Michael Wilson's emerging. Marquise Brown's actually played really well also. So I think Dobbs at that price point is pretty good if you want to spend on other positions. All right, next game, Eagles 4-0 at the Rams 2-2. What's your DFS call on this
Yeah,
game?
we got Cooper Kupp back in this game, so I'm going to be
Yep.
staying away from Nakua with that. So I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift, who has just been rejuvenated in this Eagles offense. He has looked so good in this season. In his last 3 games, he has 27, 15, and 18. With that, Kenneth Gainwell had control of that week 1, which is why Swift didn't have a great game there. But when Gainwell went down, Swift stepped up, and he's got a control of that starting running back spot. He's only $6,000 as well for DFS, so I think that is still a very good price point for him. I don't think it's been inflated too much, and he's got a high ceiling in what I think will be a high scoring matchup.
Yeah, I think it'll be a high scoring game too. I actually like Dallas Goedert in this one. He's only 4,200, so he's really cheap because he's done next to nothing this year. He has fewer than 50 yards every game, but he played 100% of the snaps last week. He has 7 targets, 2 of 3 games as well, so they're not completely ignoring him. And the coach actually came out this week and said they want to get him involved more. Rams also allow the 9th most fantasy points to tight end, so I think Goedert could really rebound this week, and he's really cheap as well. So I like him in that matchup. All right, next game, Jets 1-3 at the Broncos 1-3. 2 really disappointing teams. Who do you got here?
Yeah, I think this is a must-win game, as mentioned for a couple other ones, both for both teams. I think if you lose this game, you can almost kiss the playoffs goodbye for both of these teams. So I think it's going to be a must-win game, and I'm going to be kind of staying away from offenses in this. So I'm going to be going the Jets defense with that, and they are priced at 3,100. I think their defense has been a bright spot for them. They've had Zach Wilson, who has had some trouble turning the ball over, and they've been put in some bad spots. But I think they get after Russell Wilson in this game, and I'm going to be staying away from offensive players on both sides of the ball in this one.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. So I am going to take a chance maybe on Jaleel McLaughlin. He's
Yeah.
5,000, so his price isn't as cheap as I thought it might be, but He's likely going to start with Javonte Williams hurting, and he's looked good. He produced last week at 105 total yards and a touchdown on 10 touches. I think he's worth looking at, especially for that price tag. Jets better against the pass and the run as well. So if you want to take a chance on a guy that could produce big in an expanded role, I think McLaughlin's a guy I might look at. All right, Chiefs at the Vikings. So 3-1 Chiefs at the Vikings, 1-3. Vikings have been disappointing, but still a really good team. Should be a high scoring game in this one. Who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to be going with kind of a sleeper play at wide receiver, Kadarius Toney at 4,300 for the Chiefs. One of his main struggles is staying healthy. Again, with DFS, you don't have to have that concern. So I think he has a little bit higher ceiling here than in a season-long format with that. But he's really struggled with the drops. But he's playing Minnesota, who's one of the worst defenses against wide receivers. Again, I think this could be a shootout game. 52.5 is the over-under in this, and I like the over on that. I'll go ahead and load me up with a couple players on this game for if I'm making a DFS lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I like a lot of players in this matchup. I actually like Jordan Addison. That's a guy I'm looking at with the Vikings, a rookie receiver. He's 5,300, so not too expensive at all. He did not catch a pass last week, so it probably hurt his helped his price tag go down, I should say. But I think the Vikings are going to try to get him involved early and often. Remember, he had double-digit fantasy points every game before last week, so I think it was more of a fluke than a trend. Should be a high-scoring game for that price and his potential high ceiling. I like Addison in this one. All right, the Sunday night game. This one, in my opinion, is the best one of the week. Cowboys 3-1 at the 49ers 4-0. So should be a great game, in my opinion. A lot of decent options as well, although it could be a little low scoring with two really good defenses. Who do you like here?
Yeah, for sure. I think this might be one of the best games of the year almost. This is a potential matchup of the NFC Championship with that. I think these are the two best teams right currently in the NFC. You also got the Eagles in there, but their defense has just looked shaky so far. But both these teams have looked good, except for that Dallas loss to the Cardinals. Can't forget about that. So player I'm going to be going with is CD Lamb at 7,300. I want to go ahead and get a star in this matchup because, and I also want to avoid Dallas's defense because, as I've mentioned before, I think they have one of the best defenses. It does hurt that they lose Diggs, but I think they're going to target CD Lamb early and often in this game. And he had a really good week 2 performance. I believe he had 11 receptions with that, and he has that high ceiling with that. So,
all right, I got a different Cowboys receiver. I actually like Michael Gallup. He's really cheap, 3,600. He's been involved more recently, has 11 catches his last 2 games, double-digit fantasy points each of those games. And I actually kind of like the secondary options a little better than the top ones for the Cowboys because I think the matchups could be a little better. So I think Gallup could have a little bit of an advantage here, and I like him for that cheap price. So that's kind of my deeper dive here. All right, last game of the week, Packers at the Raiders. We're actually going to get through all of them this week, Logan. Packers 2-2, Raiders. Yeah, Raiders 1-3. Teams are on a bye though, so that helped. But we still don't have a ton of time. Who do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Josh Jacobs. He's at 7,300 as well as CD Lamb. So I got a couple more expensive plays there. But last year, Jacobs had such a great year rushing the ball. He ended the year with 109, 229, 144, 99, and 93. This year, he hasn't had much success running the ball, but he has had some great receptions. Receiving in the receiving game. Last week he had 8 receptions. He had 81 yards for 28 fantasy points. So he has done it through the air this year, and that's great in PPR formats, which what DFS is. So I'm going to be going with him.
So you took my guy again, Logan, Josh Jacobs. I agree with you. I think he's finally
a good matchup for him as well.
Yeah, he's rounded into form. Best game of the season last week, like you said, been heavily involved in the passing game. Packers also allow the 5th most fantasy points to running back. So Jacobs, you got to pay for a little bit, but I think you want to get him on your rosters in this one. Again, put all this DFS knowledge to use. Go to rtsports.com/DFS. See all the different contests we're running. As Logan mentioned, our NFL Championship GPP, $20 to enter, $900 if you finish in first, guaranteed. Logan, thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun talking with you this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
And good luck to everybody out there in all your fantasy matchups and your DFS contest. This has been Jeff Paur for Real Time Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.